Okay, we're recording. Hello, everyone. We're doing the Q&A.
Hi, hello everyone.
So should we crack straight on in? Although maybe we should do a little bit of what we've been up to and what's been going on. Lots of exciting things.
Yes,
Um,
yes. Well, when it comes to moving the prototype house, we're going to have to rethink that a little bit because exactly where we were going to put it, it turns out there's a badger living there, and the badger's just recently moved in. It wasn't there a week ago, so I don't want to disturb it. I want it to be happily settled down there. So we've got an alternative site. But that's okay. It's only a few yards different. Oh, I'm
I
losing
wonder
my.
if the badger sensed you were building something like a sort of badger palace, which
Yeah, exactly.
one might describe your architecture.
Exactly.
So that is some exciting news. Dad's got a badger. Badger. By the way, I'm sorry if you can hear like bells ringing and people shouting in the background. My partner has boxing on, so I've tried to get him to put that on as quietly as possible. But if you can hear that, I'm afraid that's what that is. And throat clearing is also him. Anyway. The other exciting news, of course, is for anyone who doesn't know, we're starting the next course, the Dean School of Art painting course, taught by Dad, live once a week for 6 weeks, is starting. We're opening applications on the 7th, and we're going to try and do this at 7 p.m. So when Dad does the live videos, 7 p.m. English time, we're going to open it up for purchase. The last course that we did, I said this every time, but I really want to make this clear, particularly for the people who follow the Q&As and the videos a lot. If you want to join, do it as quickly as you can, because the last one sold out in just a couple of hours. So we really want people who really want to do it and just get in there as soon as you can. And this next one, can you explain again, like maybe a minute? You've done it every time, but I just want to make sure everyone kind of knows what's going on. Can you explain what you'll be doing in this course for 6 weeks? We got 10
Yeah.
places.
Okay. Well, it's different to the last time. And last time was much more about acrylic painting. This is much more about how I did early works like Asia Alpha or Relea, which were essentially drawings that were colored. But because we've been asked a lot of times, how did I do those? I'm going to look at that process and perhaps look at why I changed from doing those. But yeah, we will look at that. So it's a lot more focus on drawing, same focus on creativity and that process about taking your mind out of the equation. We'll be going over a lot of that always. And it's about drawing initially.
Initially. We've also started the Dean School of Art. So we did the spring course of 6 weeks and we're doing the autumn course of 6 weeks. But ultimately what we want to do is broaden this out to have different tutors, not just 6-week courses, but shorter courses, maybe longer courses, different price ranges. We want a channel so we can have some free content as well. And what we're also hoping to do with these Q&As is to turn this into a podcast. So it's not just going to be specific Q&As that we get from the live feeds, but we're going to bring other people in, different creative people from across different industries. And do you want to say anything to the podcast that we're going to be doing?
Well, we hope to be talking to other artists, other musicians, scientists, anyone who's involved in the creative process.
There's a lot of questions that come up quite regularly that will be really interestingly and differently answered by different groups of people. And obviously, particularly Dad has a lot of amazing world-class people in their field, usually in the creative industry in some capacity, who we definitely want to have some conversations with. But you know, obviously Dad in conversation with them, and sometimes I want to weasel in as well. But yeah, we want to kind of make these conversations. I mean, for me, and Dad will say the same, a huge part of what he talks about in painting that's really important is having something to listen to. So I really think that these conversations would lend themselves to an audio platform. And so they could be something that, you know, you're listening to people talking about creativity, creating music, art, or the future while you're working on something or walking or going to work. I think podcasts have been a big part of people's lives recently. So that's something we want to do.
Okay.
And we'll be doing your questions, as we will from this point on. Okay. So this question is from J. Rachel Green. Do you believe that anyone can draw? Do you think schools are teaching art in a beneficial way?
I think people can be taught to draw. I've said this before, actually, just to the degree that people can be taught to drive, people can be taught to draw. Some get better at it, and some reach a good plane and are content. But it's that difficult and that easy, I would say. So the simple answer, the one-word answer, is yes. People can be taught to draw.
And do you think schools are teaching art in a beneficial way?
I think sadly, for a very long time, art schools have abandoned the responsibility of teaching the craft of art. God knows what many of them are teaching, but they have ceased to teach the very important process of hand-eye coordination. The amount of real estate in the brain that's devoted to hand-eye coordination is enormous. So you're giving your brain a good workout when you're learning to draw or play violin or all kinds of things. But learning the physical skill is not only very important, but it allows you to take an idea and bring it into the world. Without that physical skill, you're compromised. And there's a Japanese saying, which I will repeat again and again and again. You train the hand, so the hand in turn trains the mind. That's my answer.
You showing your hand as a way of...
No, I'm saying that's it.
Reference to your point. A trained hand is here.
There you go.
Okay. So John, I'm so sorry everyone. I know it's ironic considering the spelling of my name, but I do struggle with some of the pronunciations. Absolutely feel free to correct me if I mess this up. John Vahadia asks, what was the name of the painting you originally planned for going for the one?
Oh, it got published as Flights of Icarus, or Flights. Simple.
God, can you answer a bit slower? It takes me a while to get to the next. Okay, next question. Travis Creason asks, any thoughts of doing fabric prints for clothing?
Fro and I have discussed this a lot, and she has. She's made some very beautiful patterns and prints. The answer is it is a subject that interests me a lot. And so far, the closest we've done are those dish towels. Is that right?
That is not right, no, because we both, well, I did opera costumes, but you collaborated with Valentino.
Yes, not forgetting. Absolutely.
So the Valentino collection, it was their spring summer 2020 collection, which unfortunately, of course, coincided with COVID. But on the plus side, it means you can probably get a load of it on eBay because no one was out shopping. I don't know. I haven't looked.
You can buy it online.
Huh?
You can buy it online, and the shops in many places like Japan are open.
Well,
You
yeah,
should,
of course they are, Dad, but it was a spring summer collection, so they're not there in the shops anymore. I went in, I think it was in July or August. I went in to go and have a look because I really wanted to get this white jacket, and I know I couldn't have afforded it, but I wanted to have a look at it. And it had changed already. I think I'd missed their spring summer collection by about a week or something. So you might be able to find stuff online still. It is absolutely insanely beautiful. We went to the Paris Fashion Week exhibit. Is that what you say in fashion? You know, when the people walk on the catwalk. And we got to see everything, didn't we? And it was incredible.
yes, yes. Not something I would have done in my normal life, but my normal life had a good shake-up.
Yeah, same. But like what was really exciting for me about it was I'm an avid, you know, vintage secondhand clothing purchaser. Don't have much time for spending a huge amount of money on fashion. But one of the amazing but slightly disappointing things was when you look at that stuff close up, you get it. And maybe it's not everything, but with the stuff that they made, it was hand stitched, embroidered. They'd use all different textures to recreate these paintings on the, each piece of clothing was a piece of artwork. It was incredible.
Yes, it was.
If anyone managed to get anything, like I've never seen anything like it. And I'm not just saying that because it's Dad's stuff. Like if they just done like some prints or some stuff on a t-shirt, I would have been like, oh, that's crap, I can do that on Contrade. But it wasn't. It was insane. It was beautiful. um yeah, so I guess clothing and stuff, and we do stuff. Obviously you do prints for things on the website, and I think we should definitely do more of that. That Valentino experience was a big inspiration, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was wonderful. Yeah.
You're so English about all this stuff. Like when we went, I remember I was like so expecting you to be really blasé, and then I was like, Dad, right, what do you think, what do you think? And like, you know, your usual reaction is like, yeah, that's right. And you were just like, amazing. Americans, forgive us. um Okay, can you just talk amongst yourself while I'm getting to the next question? Oh, I'll just read it. A question for Roger. I've just been listening to Focus, the old albums. I've just discovered Focus 11, a 2019 album. The cover art for that album looks so Roger Dean. I must ask, did you produce the artwork for that album?
Yes, I did Focus 10 and 10 plus. I don't know if it's actually called Focus 11, but Focus 10 was spires. It's based on a drawing I did of spires, and Focus 11 was a church based on the design I did for a church in the desert.
Oh,
I guess what we should do is, we've said this before, but if I can have a preview of the questions, I can get material ready and show you.
you're asking too much. Get off your ass and find it.
Well, yes, I can, but I'll be gone for a few minutes.
I'll sing a song.
Oh, well, there we have a deal. What will you sing?
I feel like a sea shanty, but I don't know any.
That doesn't work.
Maybe do a diddy. I don't know.
Not a lot. A quarter of a minute. Let me have a
I
think.
know more words than you think I know. Do you want to find it? I mean, that person will know. I'm so lax with this. It's terrible. I really should approach this more professionally. Dad, can you hear me? And I'll start asking the next question. No, no, I hope I don't have to sing. I don't want to sing. I don't want to risk it. In my head, it sounds good. When I'm driving, it sounds. That's the problem with living in Japan and not driving here. I've got a license, but I tend not to drive because I just get the train everywhere. And that's sort of really, if you're unprofessional and untalented, the only place you can get away with singing. And to yourself, you sound great. There is karaoke, but I always do that with my work colleagues who are all brilliant. And I can't join in. And they are really polite and nice about it, because what they do is when they all sing for each other, they clap and cheer, and then it's the next person. And then when I sing, they really politely look away and then give me a little cheer after. Because it's so obviously terrible that if they cheered, it would just look really patronizing. So they kindly, gosh, you're taking a long time, Dad. Can you please get on with it? There's only so long I can waffle.
I can't hear singing.
I just explained why I'm not going to do it.
How disappointing.
I'll do it next time. So is this the 11, Focus 11?
Yes.
Looks great.
No, this is Focus 10.
Okay. I'm not waiting for you to get Focus 11.
Good.
Okay, cool.
It's Focus 11.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. Ed Kidera. Thank you, Freyja, for reading my question. This week you touched on ancient sculptures and the intention of the creator. Question. It seems that most archaeologists view ancient sculpture as having a religious significance. Could it be that much of this is just art? 1,000 years from now, will today's art be viewed with a religious bias? Stay safe. What do you think?
It'd be a shame.
I just think too many of us talk so much like infinite gobshite that will be around forever in digital media, that everyone's going to know all of our intimate thoughts, postcodes, bank details. It's going to be obvious that, you know, what every artist was thinking when they made something.
I think a lot of art is inspired by spiritual thinking, even if it's not directly religious. It's hard not to be.
I guess you're right, but I would say a lot of art now seems to be, a lot of art, a lot of thinking, a lot of everything, a lot of writing is about the future. And what I would say is a lot of what people write, think, and create about the future feels very religious to me. All of these ideas about post-humanity, what happens after we're not here anymore, or like what happens if we live forever, or, you know, overcome illness, and, you know, all of that kind of thing. So even when art is addressing anything, like the future seems to be a big aspect of it, it seems to have these hangovers from religion, and a lot of Western art is Christianity. All of these ideas of, and the issue that I have with a lot of it is that it's really hierarchical. So a lot of art now is there's this huge shift away from anything physical and material, like it's base and secondary and inferior to any art that's being made digitally now, or any art that's purely conceptual. And there seems to be this sort of slightly Christian puritanical idea of what's physical, what's animal, what's, you know, earthly is inferior, and then you get to the mind, and then you get to the spirit, and then the purer you can make it, the more distant from physical sensorial experience, the better. So I think there is a religious element, but people don't realize that it's a sort of Protestant hangover, in my opinion.
Well, you have the same idea in communism as well. So the simple fact is that art is about things that are made, and are therefore essentially, in every sense of that word, it is material. And it can be driven spiritually, but it's interpreted physically. And people, it's ridiculous to be afraid of that material aspect of art. It's what we make with our hands. It may be driven by spiritual ideas, but ultimately the best art, the greatest art, is a product of the brain controlling the hand.
And I often think as well, like, the problem with removing art from the physical aspect is you fall between two stools, in that a lot of artists think they're philosophers.
Art schools teach them to think that way.
And I'm totally on board with people creating ideas at the cutting edge of like human consciousness and awareness, with all of the knowledge that we have now at our fingertips, the millions of brains, the internet, everything. Use what you have to create something. But at the end of the day, if it's not, oh God, I'm ranting about this. If it's not something worthy of reading, why make art about it? I don't know. And what you end up getting is this sort of solipsistic echo chamber of basically artists saying, but what is art? What is art? It's people communicating. And if you're not doing that in a sort of sensory way, write something worth reading. Don't make something. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, we've had 100 years since art has essentially, in essence, abandoned the physical. I mean, the Dadaists started saying anything can be art that the artist chooses. And Marcel Duchamp's fountain, which was basically a ceramic urinal, was exhibited in 1916, in the height of the First World War, well over 100 years ago. And if someone says anything can be art, you don't need another artist to say, oh, a ceramic urinal can be art, a shoelace can be art, a motor car can be art. Once you've said anything can be art, you've said everything. Move on. Next idea.
Yeah, well, the next idea is to patronize and humiliate people.
Sorry?
The next idea is to then patronize and humiliate people. So I just want to show you something. So I don't know if you've seen this, Dad, but I put this up as a post like a little while ago. But this is a piece of artwork, right?
Yes.
So this is by Christopher Wool. This piece of work is called Untitled. And in the Sotheby's catalogue, it's described as satirising the viewer's search for meaning. It's worth $7,700,000, and one version of it was fought over by billionaire George Soros' son and his son's estranged wife in their divorce settlement. This is what happens.
Yes. I get that. Yes, well, it's been a century in the wilderness, not just for art, but for architecture and all kinds of visual creative areas. It's been an appalling tragedy. And I think in 1,000 years' time, they'll look back, 100-year hiatus when artists were essentially crushed.
I disagree. I think there's a lot of incredible and really interesting things happening, but
Yeah,
not in the high end of the art market.
the
That,
high end of the
that's just
market,
become an echo chamber of BS. It
yeah.
would seem. By the way, if we do turn this into a podcast and it is audio, the piece of artwork by Christopher Wool that I just showed is just a huge stencil of the word fool.
Yes, I think, what can I say? The high art, as you called it, is profoundly conservative. It's,
You said there's just too much money invested to turn the tide.
yes, if the emperor is seen to be naked, it'll be the worst financial shock is 2008, well, possibly ever. It's just, there's so much ludicrousness in that area. It's very unhealthy. It's culturally unhealthy.
I mean, it's one of the reasons as well that I found Japanese art so compelling is that for me, I guess, as someone who comes from the West and comes from a country that is particularly Protestant Christian, it might not be so much anymore, but so much of the culture has been founded on those kind of ideals and feelings. I wanted to go somewhere that had a more animism vibe, a more we're all at one feeling. And I find that the artwork that's created more in the spirit, less in the spirit of hierarchy and more in the spirit of interconnectedness, is just a lot more beautiful and makes you feel good and makes you think well, and is just better done. I don't know. So I think religion is sort of still an inescapable part of art, even if people don't think that it is. I think there's a real Protestant streak in Western art that I find ahuman. Which is not to say that I also don't think that some of the most incredible things I've ever seen are religious. Churches, cathedrals. Kilpack Church in England is one of my favourite created things. Swings and roundabouts, I guess. So we have a question. Stephen Webster asks, have you ever thought of publishing a full book of your favourite Finnish sketches?
This question comes up often. Yes, the answer is yes. And we are currently in talks about the idea of publishing sketchbooks.
You've been scanning everything, haven't you?
Sorry?
You've been scanning.
Yes, I mean, that's not a trivial process. It's a lot of work scanning everything. But we've started. One of the opportunities of the lockdown was that we could start that process.
Okay, next question.
Yeah.
Kaya Chan asks, do either of you believe or have interest in the supernatural, in brackets, ghosts, cryptozoology, etc.?
I think I do believe in a spiritual dimension. I don't really believe in the creatures of horror films. So I don't really believe in ghosts and monsters like that, even though I just saw a shadow passing behind you.
It's alive, I'm afraid.
You? You?
It's one of those things where, like, I feel like I definitely would have said no, I don't know if I believe in these things in, as you say, the form they're often kind of portrayed. Just put my shoulder over there. It's what, I don't know, some of the things that I've heard people say, who I trust and don't feel any reason to doubt, are extraordinary. Some things I hear are ridiculous. So, I shouldn't say this, it's really rude, but like in Japan, most people do believe in ghosts. And this person over my shoulder is included. And he's had some terrifying experiences, one of which I witnessed. But I will have to say, while he was asleep, and when he woke up, he was utterly convinced that this old elderly woman had been pinning him down and compressing his chest so he couldn't breathe. And I was like, I was there, that absolutely didn't happen. uh, and so I often feel like with these things, if you believe them, you see them and you feel them and you experience them. But I also sort of believe like so many things that I never expected to be real have turned out to be real and have some effect. And there's so much we don't know about how things work and the interconnectedness of things, and experiences I've had that have been really strange. Like I think I told you, like you had an operation, not a serious one, everyone, dad's fine, but no one told me when it started or when it finished. I was worried and like I was going to call dad, but I knew and I could feel when you went under general anesthetic, and I knew and I could feel when you woke up, and within 10 minutes you called me. And it was the weirdest experience because I knew, like, no one had to tell me. And it's one of the reasons I wasn't worried, was because I knew that if anything was happening, I would feel it. And I know people, sadly, who've lost members of their family, and the moment that it happened, they knew. I've talked a long time, sorry, I've got to stop drinking.
That kind of I think that kind of interconnectivity I do believe in, and I don't think that child and in adulthood I've had several experiences that have been
Hang on, wait,
made me think there's forces, spirit.
Dad, you're breaking.
Sorry, what?
You're breaking up. Can you start again?
Yes, I was just saying that I have had experiences that have been very spooky, but they've not been associated with, you know, the typical haunted side.
Your internet's bad.
And as a child, what can I say? Sorry.
Are you there? Are you on the right internet, Dad?
Okay. It's going to break. Sorry? No, I'm not. I was. Somehow it's changed. If I...
Hello?
Let me just change it. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
That was very weird. I managed to change the internet source in mid-stride there.
I wonder if
last time we did it, we
What were you saying? Sorry, start again from your, yeah.
I said that I have had experiences where I've been thinking that there are spirits in the landscape that are very powerful.
But we're not talking about LSD, Dad.
Very. What can I say? I believe there's a spiritual side of things. I believe there's interconnectivity. I don't believe in the ghosts of horror movies. Okay?
Is that all you want
That's
to
it.
say on that?
Yeah, for now.
I've been on for ages. And
I wrote you a story about me. Sorry?
I know, I was
I
just...
sent you a written story about. Start again. Go on. Next question.
No, you sent me a story. Tell me.
Oh, a story about a walk with Calvin started before dawn. And we came across these little teeny dolls that perched in a tree.
Calvin is a dog.
Can you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, next question.
You can't leave it that everyone is going to ask what those little dolls in your numinous experience was.
Can we publish the story? Can we put it up somewhere on the website?
Yeah, we can. You don't want to say now? You want to move on?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Okay, so our next question is... okay, this is just a quick one. Mike Mahoney wants to ask, can you tell us how much the calendars will sell for?
Less than last year, but I don't know the final figure.
Less than last year. Okay.
Yeah, we got a much better deal on the printing this year. So they will be less than last year.
Okay. Okay, so we have quite a long number of questions coming up, which, yeah, I thought would be interesting to discuss. Let me just, so this was commented. By the way, everyone who wants to ask a question, there are several ways of doing it. If you comment anywhere on these Q&A videos or on the live videos that Dad does, I go through all of it. So I particularly notice ones that have question written at the beginning or Q&A. But we have a question from YouTube from someone called Stew Flies. And it says, I have not been a follower of podcasts, etc. before, but have found a few that have been hugely satisfying. A major drawback is that they are one-way conversations. Yes, I can ask questions, but there is not a to and fro that would exist were we in the same space. Analogous to the visiting galleries discussion you had here. On top of this, I have top type my questions, which frees them and does not allow the nuance I might be capable of were I talking or speaking. What I'm trying to do is mitigate any perceived aggression / confrontational tone that might offend. So, with reference to your kimono exhibition trip, when do the thousands that would usually be there get their experience? Do we need much bigger galleries? I want to sort of circle back to that question. A similar question about the medieval thatched cottages. How much bigger would Tokyo have to be to house everyone in such a fashion? You can answer that, Dad. I just want to quickly say, I don't think megatropolis cities are the future anyway. I think the future, we're all working online, more of us are doing creative jobs, more of us are doing location-free jobs. I don't think everyone living on top of each other in one huge metropolis is the answer or where anyone wants to go. It's really bad for mental health, it's really bad for women, it's really bad for lots of stuff. It might be good for some things, but people generally want to live in communities. It's much better for you. And so what I would say to that is, I don't think the answer is to build thatched cottages that, 20 million people can live in proximity of each other. The answer is to bleed out these cities, and it's going to be difficult building new communities and making the people who live in big cities coalesce easily with those communities. But I don't think the answer is 20 million people living on top of each other.
At the moment, though, with the populations that we have, cities are going to tend to be crowded. The fact is, though, that without making a city any bigger than it is now, you could produce a great deal more space and a great deal more amenity for people by having people live in the light, surrounded by plants, and everything that doesn't require that, roads, rail, warehousing, supermarkets, theatres, don't have to be up in the sky. You don't need to put the theatre set in the trees. People need to live there, though. People need to be able to see that. And as I say, without increasing the size of cities, one could increase the amount of a city that is green enormously, increase the living space for each family, each person enormously within the same size cities. It would be a question of doing it differently. Why do we devote so much ground area of a city to the infrastructure?
But I also just don't see why we have to live in huge cities. Like most people, loads of people, most people I know have had to work remotely, unless you're a doctor or, you know, in certain sort of frontline professions. You don't actually have to work in the city. They just prefer it because they know you're not playing video games. And what I see for the future is there will be cities, but there'll be sort of communication hubs for getting together to meeting if and when you have to, maybe place it like huge centre parks with hotel rooms where you can sort of get together and meet, do a bit of shopping, and then go back to where you live.
Yeah, but it's not realistic in England or Tokyo or Japan.
Why not?
Because there isn't the space. You know, if you do spread it thin, it means you have no countryside left.
But why not use, I mean, there's lots of countryside that you could build in that would be sympathetic to that countryside.
No, what you have to do is increase the amount of countryside, not decrease it. And by increasing it, you can bring it into towns and countries. And the simple way to do that, as I say, is the huge percentage of a city that's given over to infrastructure, which could be given over to living and breathing.
I don't know. One of the reasons I don't like cities is that I think they're really bad for mental health. They're really bad for women. Like, I think
yes, but because cities are oppressive and you're squidged when you're traveling by the communication system.
But also because people don't live together because they're a community. They have no relationships with each other based on friendship or family. People don't know each other's neighbours. You have to travel to meet people that you have a sense of community with. And I think that's not conducive to being happy. I think we're evolved to live in tribes of, 100 or so people max.
You could have communities within cities. You just don't have to build them in such an oppressive way. Building differently would make a difference.
Do you think that would make enough of a difference that we could have not tower blocks?
Yes. Tower blocks are a disaster. Yes, you could have a city that has, as I say, less surface area than cities now, without feeling that oppressed by the architecture. It's the architecture that's failed. You know, you could live in Tokyo for multiple lifetimes without actually knowing how big it is.
I went somewhere the other day and I was queuing up to buy some cake at this English bakery. I wasn't really there to buy cake. I was there to give someone a present from a shop in England. Anyway, I ended up buying some cake. But I had to queue for an hour to get into this flair. Yeah, I know you'll all be shocked to hear, but like English cuisine actually, you know, as long as it's cake based, is very popular in other countries. An hour's worth of popular. And I was standing there and I was looking at these buildings, and I was in a really affluent area. And I was just having this sense of like, I know if I was stood here as a child, I would find this really scary and depressing. And then it kind of just made me worried about like the input that you're having, like kids just looking at places. I went to a really artsy fartsy kind of hippie school, and it was absolute, and I believed in magic way beyond the time that you're supposed to because of being in that environment. and and I just sort of thought kids who grow up in these concrete jungles must get a real smack in the face that magic isn't a thing from a really early age. I don't know, it's just what it felt like. There's got to be a way of doing it where we don't have, where it's not a sort of Hobson's choice, where it's not a kind of, you know,
I think
a grim metropolis, or do we all have to destroy the countryside?
yes, the grim metropolis is a product of of a lack of imagination in planning and architecture. It could be beautiful. You could build a city with the population of Tokyo that everyone would want to be in and visit at least, because it would be a wonderful place to be. And it's not to do with numbers, it's to do with imagination and architecture, or the lack of.
But I also think there are incredible places built in the side of mountains. I know everyone's going to be like, don't build in the mountains. But like, if you think of like those places that we went to in Bryce Canyon in Arizona, those I can't remember the names of these places, but these houses built in the side of mountains, and Matera in Italy, which is basically a huge 3D cave of a mountain that people have built houses in. Like, there are ways of doing it that look incredible and don't, to my eyes, destroy the nature of it, but also you have tons of people living there. I don't know.
The easier way, or the more benign way, would be to make the city like Bryce Canyon, not build a city in Bryce Canyon.
But a city of beautifully carved into the, okay, whatever, let's move on.
Why not? Why not? Exactly, why not? The city should be a place that is beautiful and inspirational from the get-go, not oppressive and depressing.
Yeah, and I think if you get that moment of looking at somewhere through your child's eyes, like as you were as a child, and you think, God, this would have been somewhere I had a nightmare about, it's a bad sign. Okay, so Stew Flies is what we would call a provocateur, I think. His second question, which I know is going to really rile me, is without any nod to all lives matter, the advertising pressure to conform to unrealistic standards is almost, in brackets, as strong for men. The discussion here might be about the difference between unrealistic body images and unrealistic concepts of masculinity. A lot of us are crushed by the lack of 6/8 pack, however. So this was in reference, do you remember when I was saying when I regularly walk from my train station to work, I see tens of images of incredibly thin white women in advertising and billboards and nothing else. And while I look at these, I'm often listening to a podcast, and I was one day listening to an audiobook of this woman whose daughter had an eating disorder. I was looking at all these images and I thought, well, of course she does. Any thoughts, Dad?
Yes, I do. I think there's enormous pressure to conform in our thinking. And it's not, the advertising industry is the obvious target, but academia is the same. there is enormous pressure to think in one way. And there is a sort of hidden message. I'm going to focus on academia here. If you don't think like us, you're in trouble. And when I was a child, I think that coercive pressure to think alike is extremely damaging and dangerous. And when I was very, very young, under 6, I really, really loved my grandmother. And she gave me something in the presence of an aunt. And it was an aunt who made it clear to me that she didn't like me. So I didn't like her. And when my grandmother gave me this thing, and I can't remember, it might have been a sweet or it might have been a present. I hardly ever saw her because we were living abroad. My father was in the army. And being in the presence of my grandmother was just bliss. And she gave me something. And I would naturally have honored that gift by showing both gratitude and thank you and affection for my grandmother. But this aunt, before I had a chance to express my thanks in that way, said, now don't forget to thank your grandmother. And it ruined it, because I could no longer say thank you without it sounding contrived and coerced. And I was so furious with her. And later, my grandmother redeemed the situation by telling me that she knew I was going to say thank you in my way. So that was good. But the bad thing is true. We are told we must think this way, we have to do this, we have to do that. If we don't all mimic the people who are virtue signaling, we are doing something very wrong. And it means you can't have a sympathetic response to a situation without it being contrived and coerced. It's just not, yes, I think it's very bad that so much of our society is trying to control the way we think. Advertising and, as I say, academia, everywhere. On the television, we're being pressured to think a certain way. And whether we naturally think that way or not, it's extremely unhealthy. It's damaging if you already think that. It's a pressure not to toe the line. It's just bad news.
The world has become blue or red.
Indeed.
I would like to say a couple of things, if you don't mind, to this, because I feel like I would really not be doing justice to the subject or my people if I didn't address the fact that this person said almost as strong as men. So advertising pressure to conform to unrealistic standards. If you're talking about body-wise, there is no comparison. And I'm happy to argue this for hours. Like, men are not under the same pressure. I can give you a million examples. I walked into a shop and I went to the magazine aisle just to see, just off the top of the back, like, who's on the magazines. I tell you what, it was all women in their 20s, undressed, airbrushed. And none of them were known for anything other than being a model. The one man who was there was Brad Pitt. Okay, I'll concede, conventionally good looking, but also not in his 20s, not undressed and valued because of a talent that he has. And I will also tell you, because I'm really just gonna get on my horse about this, it is not women that are putting this pressure on men or reinforcing it. Women in the public eye who don't conform to, beauty standards that are imposed upon them are trolled and told that basically they are fat and should die, or you know, they are not attractive enough to be sexually assaulted. And they get trolling based on not looking like, not conforming to this standard. Women don't do this to men. Women don't say, you are not a 25-year-old model with a six-pack, therefore you should die. Women coined the phrase dad bod. Dad, do you know what dad bod is? Dad bod is women saying that what they find attractive is a middle-aged, over man who's wrinkly and has let himself go. That is a term of attraction that women have coined. There is no equivalent that you people, men, have come up with for women. There's no mum bod. There's no, do you know what I really like? Women who've let themselves go a bit and are a bit kind of paunchy and wrinkly. You guys don't do that for us. You just attack us for not being 25-year-old Hadids who have been photoshopped. I'm sorry, I could go on about this for hours, but the problem with it the problem with it is it has real life consequences. What it does is it makes women so contemptible for not looking a certain way that it makes us disposable. And this, okay, right, I've written this out, Stu. I've written this out because this got my goat, as you knew it would. What I've written is, sorry, Dad, I know this is your Q&A.
Oh, it's ours.
Images of women in the media are what fuel the contempt of women that makes us disposable and consequently puts our lives in danger. The ubiquity doesn't affect men. The reinforcement by trolling doesn't affect men, and the resultant threats, mass murders by incels and domestic murders doesn't affect men. Also, men have alternatives. Fashion houses won't dress women over a certain size. This doesn't happen to men. When I check the magazines, they, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I went on about that. When I was talking about the Brad Pitt on the cover, there wasn't an equivalent for women, e.g. Angelina Jolie. She would likely be wearing something very revealing, airbrushed, and criticized for her aging / weight loss / gain. But the only women I saw were models, barely clothed, airbrushed, with no identity other than the fact they're thin white models. Okay, and the other thing is, like, men who do get pressurized into looking a certain way and do feel like they lose out in the game of society by not looking a certain way, the result is they kill women. If you look at incels, they blame women for their lack of social acceptance. When women do it, when women are fed this constant stream of how they're supposed to be and look, they blame themselves. Men blame women and then they kill them. And I can't get on board with the almost. If you hadn't put that almost in brackets, Stu, I may have let this go. I've gone on way too long. Bud's gonna have to edit this. Have you got anything to say, Dad?
Yeah, I sympathize with you. It's weird. I think it's unhealthy for everybody being expected to think in a certain way.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I just on a slightly side note, this does have real like implications. Like even when I'm in Japan and I'm talking to some work colleagues and they'd all been out the night before drinking. And my image of Japanese salarymen is that they all go to these things called girl bars where, you know, you pay a woman to chat to you. And then if anything else happens, it's her choice, in quotation marks. And so I said to these guys, like, oh, did you go to some girls' bars, sort of joking? And they were like, yeah, but it was someone else's idea. And I was really shocked because I was just joking. And I just thought, well, this is a huge group of men now that I thought I was on a level with, that I thought I got on with, that I thought respected me. And, you know, suddenly this whole dynamic has changed. You're people who use my people. I don't know. Have I said too much?
No. You can't ever say too much while it's still is happening.
To turn it around, I'll tell you all a story about Dad, which I found out on this subject. Dad got taken out, I won't name names, but Dad got taken out by a business partner, friend of his in Japan, and they went to one of these girl bars. And I heard about this from a third party, so it wasn't from Dad. And this third party said, it was really funny, Freyja, because your dad turned up, realised what was going on, had a glass of water and went back to his hotel. Do you remember that night, Dad?
Yes.
And I was really proud. At the same time, I sort of thought, well, why didn't you just voice your disappointment with your friends? But at least you left.
What can I say? I had another question. You never told me that story before.
Didn't I?
Oh.
Also, Stu. No, I won't go on. So I'm sorry, I've talked way too much again. We're going to have to do this podcast, Dad, where you at least do some with other people, because everyone's going to be sick of the sound of me.
I won't.
Okay. So last question, we'll just do this one quickly, and maybe Bud can edit out my rant. Kaya Chan asks, do either of you think that the make things hard on yourself approach is the right way for art schools to teach, i.e. only sketching in pens so you can't erase, not using reference images, etc.?
I don't know what their experience has been with art schools, but from every other source I know, there's a terrific tendency in art schools to think abuse is a way to learn, or abuse is a way to teach. I think self-discipline is a very powerful adjunct to learning, doing it, and doing it a lot. And doing it under difficult circumstances sometimes. But there is an abusiveness about the way art is taught that I think is totally counterproductive. It doesn't make better artists. It makes more confused artists. It makes artists with less ability than they could have. I would say art students coming out of a lot of art schools now have less ability than 4 years training should have given them. They make up for it by teaching themselves, but the art schools are doing a poor job, by and large. I know more about American art schools and English art schools than anywhere else in the world, but in England and America, to a disappointing degree, the teaching is mean-spirited and inadequate.
As a teacher, I would say, in what capacity I do teach, I really think it's case by case, because I have I'm talking about kids, and I think there's so many parallels with kids and adults. When you're learning, I think the processes are so close. But I would say that what I've seen is some children are just so expressive that they just need to let things pour out of them, and any inhibition that you put on that crushes them. And what you need to do is just push them, tell them to broaden, try other things, add more, do more. But there's another type of child who will use a pencil and an eraser and do the same line over and over and over again because they're so anxious about what they're doing, and for whom giving them a pen and saying, oh, you can only use this, sometimes can help, and sometimes can let them break out of that self-editing thing.
The self-editing thing is what produces writer's block. It what makes all creative people stumble. Getting out of that mindset about editing on the fly. If I had a classroom of kids, and whether they were working explosively and expressively or whether they were totally stymied, I would say the same thing is true. A little bit of guidance and a lot of distraction. I would say an art teacher who has the skill and the will to read them a story will probably break that habit of drawing and erasing much better than any other thing they do. So telling a good story will distract them enough to break that pattern. And that's what you have to do. You have to break the pattern without breaking the child.
Mm.
And the way is distraction. And it doesn't work unless they love the distraction and want more of it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, because it's happened to me a few times, and I'm just trying to think what worked and what definitely didn't work when I've had kids. And I don't want to be like saying anything really culturally normative about this, but I've definitely found, like, teaching here, kids are much more conscious of making mistakes, and what they want to do things perfectly first time. So what it results in is not just that drawing, erasing, but drawing something this big. And it's a really difficult thing to get somebody out of. And I would just let them do it. But for some things, like, if I had a student the other day, we were making puppets, and she wanted to make a doll. She wanted to make a fabric doll, and she kept drawing it out on the fabric this big. And I said to her, like, if you draw it this big, when we cut it out and stitch it, it will be this big. You have to do it this big, and then it will be this big. And she just wouldn't draw anything bigger than that. So eventually we had to do stuff on paper, and then I had to get her to draw around it. But it's yeah, I guess I'm learning how to learn. And distraction, I guess, is one way, but it's difficult to distract whilst also instructing.
Yes. I mean, if you're drawing, you can draw, you can hold the pen right by the mark, apart the marks. You can go white around the fingernails as you put excessive pressure on, and you can do that. Or you can move from the wrist, or you can move from the elbow, or you can move from the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. And it's a question of choreography as much as calligraphy. It's, yes, there's a physical freedom you need. To me, an analogy I would give is, it's another kendo one, I'm afraid. If you hold the pencil tight enough that you can make your fingernails go white, if you just grip it strongly, it reminded me of Conan the Barbarian holding a sword so tensely. You can't move. You cannot move. The whole key to drawing is to get the choreography going, the movement going. You have to be able to do all of that. And to do that, you have to have as loose a possible grip of the pencil as you possibly can and still control it. Your muscles are holding it gently. There's a saying in kendo that when you make a cut with kendo, you should be able to hold a plover's egg in the palm of your hand while you make that cut in such a way that you don't break the plover's egg. So there's, yes, you have to teach people to loosen up, but you do have to distract them. And you need to do both. And I remember doing kendo for many years, and my sensei saying to me, you know, on the eve of when I was doing Sandan, which I never did in the end, on the eve of that, the last practice I had, he said the same thing he always said. He sort of, get hold of my shoulders, too tense, relax those shoulders. So it's a constant process of learning to relax and be fluid and to be distracted.
So you need Anne?
Yes. You say still going to speak to me?
Yes, he'll be very impressed. 柔道で何段ですか？初段？それは4? So Mitsuya's in judo is only ichidan, shodan, one dan.
That's very good.
Yeah. お父さん剣道では2段。Mitsuya said judo is harder. He's quick.
That to me is the Mandy Rice Davis answer.
Who's that?
When she was in court, she said somebody had done something, and the judge said to her, he says he didn't. And she says, well, he would say that, wouldn't he?
Do you know what? I shouldn't say this. I might say this anyway. I did a talk recently and I made a point that was saying that one of the benefits of imagination and culturally us opening up globally via the internet is people not only can imagine something better, they can see what they've got and learn to be dissatisfied and demand something better. And his point was that actually there are very good reasons why we culturally conform. Historically, it's been a matter of safety that we all pull together as a community. And he was a man of a certain age and I'm a woman of a much younger age. And I just thought when he was saying that, well, we would say that, wouldn't we? Both of us, respectively. No offense, Dad of a certain age.
Well, I don't mind you making me think that some of the things I say are because I'm a certain age. I'd be much more upset if you said, Dad, you've been saying that since you were 15. Which I probably have, actually. I think if something's right, it's right and it's right. It sometimes takes generations to get it across. Anyway, was that your last question?
It was, and we've been banging on for ages. We do need to make a podcast of this, I think, because I think it's sort of getting to the point where Q&A is a bit disingenuous, a term.
It gives us an interesting starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And we get some really interesting questions. I'm not even done with that Stu guy. He's got more I want to pick through. So yeah, keep firing your questions in, everyone. As I said, I really want to make this a podcast where we bring in other people and we talk about creativity more generally. So like questions that kind of, I mean, of course, if you want to know something from Dad specifically, definitely ask. But I really, yeah, if you kind of bring up questions that we can kind of put to other people. I don't know if you want to name names, Dad, but we've got some people in mind that we want to talk to, don't we? And you do, who you will be anyway.
Just wait till we've done it and then we will.
Okay. So is there anything else that you want to say about anything?
Probably. My mind's gone blank. We'll do a Q&A where we bring everyone up to date with calendar prices and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay, but just as a sort of wrap up, house in order, admin thing, course is going live on the 7th. So if you want to do it, sign up. The information is on the website now, so you can read about it and what it's going to involve. So you can think about joining before you have to make the decision. Yeah.
I think no, the architecture thing is worth doing properly. I think we should do two, one on architecture and one on the future.
Like a discussion.
Yeah. With drawings, and I figure out how to do that.
And I can think of some people that would be really good to get in on this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, brilliant.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, and making it this far. I know I ranted about woman stuff, but if I don't do it, who's gonna? You saw Dad's response. He changed the subject. So I have to do it. As always, it's the woman's work. Oh, this is going to get so many dislikes on YouTube. I don't care. It's got to be done.
Don't worry.
And we'll see you next week, everyone. Put your questions. You can either comment on this video or you can comment on Dad's live painting. Anyway, you see a video of Dad, comment a question. If you put question at the beginning, I'm much more likely to see it and we will discuss / have a massive rant. And as always, sorry you didn't hear more from Dad.
See you Wednesday.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. You stay there, Dad. Bye.